Well, people are going to drift in gradually from the waiting room, but since we only have an hour for our session, we'll make a start. Welcome, everybody, to this monthly webinar from the GI ACE program. That's the Anti-Corruption Evidence Program, which is supported by the UK's Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office. The subject of this month's webinar is new approaches to asset declaration and verification in Nigeria. It's a really fascinating subject, as you know, those of you who specialize in this area will know. And if you're new to this area, this is a great introduction to it. We've got two experts here to talk us through it and talk us through not just the concepts, but their own research and how it has worked out in practice. So it's a huge privilege for us to have Abdullahi Bello, who's the chair of Nigeria's Code of Conduct Bureau, and Jackie Harvey, whose research this was based on, professor at the Newcastle Business School. I should have introduced myself. I'm Robert Barrington. I'm professor at the Centre for the Study of Corruption based at the University of Sussex, and we run the GIACE programme. But now I'm going to pass straight to Jackie Harvey, who is going to introduce the subject, talk us through the first bits, and then she will pass to Abdullahi. That'll take about half an hour, and then we'll open up to a Q&A, and we'll wrap up on the hour. Jackie, over to you.
Okay, so thank you to GIACE and to the Centre for Study of Corruption for inviting Abdullahi and myself here today, and to Robert for chairing. As he said, I'm going to cover just the background around the ideas behind the research that we carried out, how it was designed, the approach that we followed, and then just discuss some of the findings that are particularly pertinent and relevant to the work that we're doing with the CCB. And then Abdullahi will take over to talk about what he's been implementing at the CCB since 2024. And then we'll just briefly cover what our plans are for our continued collaboration. So I hope that's okay for everybody. Just to focus on our project was focused around whether improvements in beneficial ownership could be helpful in reducing corruption or improving the opportunity to recover the proceeds of corruption. We were very interested in looking at the reality on the ground. So you have all the frameworks, but really the whole project was around what's it like operationally in Nigeria, how are the agencies relating to one another, and how effective are they in the task that they've been given by the government. So it ran for a couple of years. During that time, we produced two reports, an interim and a final, both of which were taken back to our contacts and discussed and sense-checked with groups of respondents. And we produced 5 academic papers, one of which was on non-convention-based asset recovery that was actually a useful paper for the CCB. Another one looked at the resourcing implications for countries such as Nigeria in complying with FATF requirements around beneficial ownership transparency. And then 3 further papers that were more around corruption and accountability. And the purpose was always to provide an evidence base which would be of use to the authorities in how they may be able to produce a simpler or more cost-effective method of operation. So the design was built around a series of work packages, each from a very different perspective and each contributing something to the overall project. And the outputs from each of the work packages are available on the GIA site. Key for us, and I think this was behind why we feel that the project has been successful in maintaining its contacts was always that the design was going to be collaborative. So it was designed to involve both academics and practitioners. And the practitioners were really important because it meant that members of the project team were able to speak the same language as the officers working within the different agencies. And also important for us is that two of the team members held important positions within the AC framework in Nigeria. And they were key in terms of facilitating access to the agencies that we wanted to speak to and to work with, and also in maintaining the relationships long term. So you can see that I've listed beneath the diagram there a range of some of the outputs and from the various work packages. And we'll have to say that we were impacted by COVID, because it was always intended that we would go into Nigeria. The team would come to Nigeria multiple times to keep coming back as findings were emerging, to go back to present the findings, to sense check them with respondents to make sure that we were on the right track. Unfortunately, we ended up having to do a lot of that virtually, but we still feel that we managed to achieve our objectives. Key findings, for anybody familiar with Nigeria, or indeed other countries working in the AC field, these findings probably are not surprising. We did at the start of the project observe very poor data quality, and more significantly, an unwillingness to share that data interagency. And I think that largely comes from the fact that many of the agencies were set up not in cooperation, but more in competition with each other. And that lack of sharing came out, the lack of trust came out as a key finding from our data collection. And it was largely, the data deficiency was the key finding, and this was put down to a lack of trust. We also found that the hierarchical structures in operation within the agencies meant that operational decision-making was very slow. So briefly turning to the findings that were pertinent and of use to the CCB, and they're not rocket science. A lot of these are very pragmatic, very obvious findings. But one was the fact that many agencies are collecting very similar information, but using different identifiers, or using things such as email addresses or phone numbers that can be changed. So having a single identifier, for example, using the NIM, the National Identity Number, across multiple agencies would help match up data. An obvious point is that if you are requiring all the different agencies to collect this information, making sure they're properly resourced in order to be able to carry out their roles. And in that particularly, we were looking at the CAC at the time, the Corporate Affairs Commission, who was responsible for putting together the Registry of Beneficial Ownership, but it was also highly relevant to the CCB. That given resource constraints, actually taking a more nuanced approach would be better. So rather than trying to be comprehensive in data capture, looking at your areas of greatest vulnerability, focus on the most senior officials, PEPs, the most significant companies across those two agencies. recognizing that data sharing is really can enhance the operation of the CAC and the CCB, and importantly, extending that into the revenue authorities. Something that was picked up by the FATF's most recent report on asset best practice in asset recovery is really significant, and then sharing out beyond that to the main prosecuting agencies. The importance of simplifying asset declaration, so promoting voluntary compliance is really significant. You make it easy for people to do things. So making sure that the forms are simplified, they're easily obtainable. One key area that was surprising that came out of our research was quite a surprise, I think, for and useful to the CCB was the interagency mapping that we undertook. And that was useful to the CCB because it enabled them to demonstrate how central they were within the AC framework that was operating in Nigeria, and therefore why other agencies should collaborate with them. Before I hand over to Abdullahi, just to discuss the changes that they've been able to implement, I just want to finish my section by noting that since our formal project finished, there have been changes and developments in Nigeria. So there is a register of beneficial ownership. Many of the key agencies are being supported to put their data onto an electronic basis so that it becomes more easy to access and share, which is really good to see. And I think from our perspective and my perspective from this project, what was really useful is the timing of our work. So the findings that were of interest around data sharing and data integrity aligned with the objectives of the CCB. And that's really what helped us, I think, in terms of the take-up. So if I pass over now to Abdullahi, he'll be able to talk about what changes have taken place more recently at the CCB. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for the presentation, Jackie. Like you said, I am the chairman of Code of Conduct, but before I continue, let me just introduce a Code of Conduct Bureau. For those of us that are not aware of it, it's an anti-corruption agency in Nigeria, created by the 1979 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And then one of the functions that we as CCB will do is that we receive asset declaration from public servants, and then we verify those asset declarations, we examine them, we make sure that everything is all right, people are not living above their means. We also make sure that a public servant are adhering to the highest standard of ethics in public service. For example, there is no conflict of interest, abuse of office, bribery, and so many other codes. We have around 14 codes that each and every public servant is supposed to adhere to. And again, we also prevent corruption and some other things. So those are initially what the Code of Conduct Bureau is all about. So like Jackie mentioned, this project was done previously around 3 or 4 years back. I was a member of the team that did the research while I was a lecturer in the UK, Northumbria University. So then I was appointed the chairman of CCB, and I saw the research. It was very important and is in line with the mandates of the Code of Conduct Bureau. So what we did since I became the chairman of Code of Conduct is to look at the research and see how can I implement some of the recommendations in the research. And one of the key areas that we try to do some reforms is in the risk-based verification. If you consider the coverage of what we do at CCB, we are supposed to enforce the Code of Conduct for public officers for both the executives, the legislature, and then the judiciary in Nigeria, and then also from the federal, the state, and local government. We are talking about 5 million public servants in Nigeria. So definitely it's something that is not possible for us to do all at the same time. We don't have the resources to cover 5 million public servants. And what we decide to do at the CCB is to look at how can we do a risk-based approach to it, based on the caliber of people that we're talking about, whether they're PEPs, and even the organization. Sometimes it's based on individuals, their level, and then some organizations, they are revenue generating agencies, and some organizations are big organizations. So that's what we decided to do. But first, what we did was that let's even start with the top government officials. So that's why we had to go and do verification for all the ministers in Nigeria. We managed to do a lot of ministers, around 20 ministers who came to our office, and we verified them. So what we are trying to do is that what have you declared in your asset declaration? And then we have to confirm whether what you declare is actually what you say you own is what you own. So by the time we finish with that, we also look at the PAMSECs. There are permanent secretaries in the ministries. We also invited them to come to our office. We did verification based on what they have declared. And also the chief executive of government agencies. So that is the level that we took. We wanted to just concentrate on those individuals because they have the responsibility that they have is huge, and then most of the risks is around those areas. And I can tell you that we have seen a lot, and then we have discovered a lot of things based on our investigation and based on our verification. Only recently, we discovered a former minister that acquired a property in London and then illicitly. So we even had to go to court, and we recovered the property for the federal government of Nigeria. And this is all as a result of our verification. So another thing we did again is about the digitization of forms. So before I came, we had, even right now as we are trying to transit to an electronic system of doing it. We print forms and then give it to public servants to complete. But like I said the other time, we have around 5 million public servants. There is no way for you to print 5 million public servant forms, for public servants, because of the resources involved. So what we decided to do in the interim is to upload the form on our website, and then public servant can go and download the form and then complete it and bring it back to us. So at least that has saved us a lot of money. And then again, nobody has any excuse that I don't have a form to complete. But then that is also an interim measure. What we are right now doing is trying to do a online asset declaration system. We have already gone far, around 95% completion. We are going to develop an online asset declaration system so that public servant can go and do it at their own convenience. You don't have to come to our office. And I can even tell you that on Wednesday next week, we are signing an MOU with the organization that is doing the development for us, which is a government organization. And we are finalizing everything. Maybe by the end of this year, we'll have that ready to go. So by the time we do that, we have online asset declaration. Everything is going to be fine. And like Jackie said about the NIN and some other databases, that online asset declaration system is going to be linked to major databases. We're going to link to the CAC. We are going to link to the land registry. We are going to link to so many other databases, so that by the time we are doing it, we are also doing automatic verification, not going to do manual verification. Another thing that we did in the case of the form, Jackie mentioned it as part of the recommendation of the research, is about trying to simplify the form to make it easy for public servants to declare their assets. What we saw is that the form, there are so many things that have not been captured by the form. And again, the structure of the form is not consistent across asset classes. So we modified the form. We did it in such a way that it's very easy for people to understand it. It's also consistent across several assets. Apart from that, we also provided guidance for each section of asset that you're going to declare. There is a guidance of what am I going to provide, what are the information that is required, and what supporting document do I need to put there. So that has made it very, very easy for people to do it. And then again, we expanded it, because before we don't have like the cryptocurrency assets and so many other assets, the digital assets, we don't have them, but now we have introduced them. Another thing that is very important with the new form that we did is that because of this research, again, the beneficial ownership, we introduced a section called interest and affiliation section. It's not about the asset that you have, any interest that you have, or any affiliation that you have. Even if your name is not mentioned in the registry, or if your name is not mentioned, you have to tell us that information. So again, that is one of the key things that we did to uncover any beneficial ownership issues that may happen in the public service asset declaration. Then the issue of unique reference numbers, because we are an anti-corruption agency, but the actual work that we do investigation, we do prosecutions. But when I came again, we saw that we need to standardize that processes, and I got somebody from the EFCC, because EFCC has a lot of experience in investigation. So I decided that, okay, what are you going to do to make sure that we have consistent way of doing things? We have reference numbers that once you open a case file, is going to be consistent throughout the life of that investigation. And he came to the bureau, he's here, and then he has been providing the assistance, has been doing that a lot. And that's one of the key things about the next thing that she mentioned about interagency collaboration. You can see that now I got somebody from the FCC who is a sister agency. They gave us two of their staff. One of their staff is now the Director of Intelligence and Investigation in CCB. So he's bringing all the best practices in the EFCC, is bringing it to CCB, including these unique reference numbers. And then another one, again, my SA, who is also bringing the experience that we have at the CCB. Of course, I have to say that even our staff, we have very good and talented staff, very resourceful staff, and they've been doing a lot, because it's just the guidance that they needed, and they've been doing a lot. So one of the things that we did, we even created a unit called Financial Intelligence Unit, because that financial investigation and forensic accounting unit. That unit is doing high-profile cases of investigation, verification, and they're doing a lot. And we got those staff from the existing members of staff. We did an internal recruitment where we got capable hands from the bureau and did that. And finally, about the interagency MOUs that she mentioned in her presentation, I can tell you that we have a lot. Now we have an MOU with the EFCC, we have an MOU with the ICPC. We are signing an MOU next week, like I said, with Nesani, the one that is building this database for us. We also have arrangement with the Bureau for Public Service Reform, and also the CAC that is also key to beneficial ownership. I can tell you now that the CAC has already agreed to give us API access to their database, and that's what we are building in our new online asset declaration system. So once our system is working now, once somebody declares an asset, he says he has a company or businesses, we can directly link to CAC database to get that, whether he's a director, whether he's a shareholder, whether he's beneficial owner. So that is one of the key things that we are doing with that. EFCC, we have done a lot of cases, because one of the key things about the CCB is that you can be investigating cases at CCB. You're also investigating cases at EFCC or ICPC. So there is no double jeopardy. So if there is any information that we can get from the EFCC or the ICPC, we can use that for our own work. And if there is any information that they need from us, also they can get it from us, and then they can do their work. And that map that Jackie presented is very, very important, because if you look at it, CCB is at the heart of all the anti-corruption effort in Nigeria. And why is this so? EFCC, for example, if they're looking at any public officer, because we have database of all public officers, their declarations, they will send information to us that they need something from this declaration of this public officer. And that's why the collaboration was on a daily basis. And then they will go ahead and do their investigation. So that's why CCB is ahead of it. Police, they will send information to us. They will also send information, SCPC will send information to us, and that's how we collaborate. But when I came in, I said, okay, it's good for us to share that information as well that we mentioned, but it's also good for us to do the investigation ourselves, because we too are a law enforcement agency, we're anti-corruption agency, and then we do it as well. That's why we have started doing that, and we have seen a lot of results. We have started getting forfeitures, we have started getting recoveries for the first time in the history of the CCB, and that's what we want to continue. And I can tell you that the research that we have done has opened the eyes of CCB to all the possibilities that we can achieve. And that's the thing that I want to discuss about this issue. Maybe we can discuss some other issues when you come to the question and answers. Thank you very much.
Oh, great. Thanks, Abdullahi. So just to finish off with, we're looking ahead. Abdullahi mentioned that about the forms and about the scope and the comprehensiveness of the Act, and that stakeholders had expressed concerns that the provisions are quite complex. The underlying legislation is now quite old, and there was a feeling that they need to be brought up to date and fit for purpose going forward. So one of the things that the team are able to continue to support on, and Northumbria has provided a small amount of funding for us to recruit an RA, is to look at benchmarking against international best practice to provide evidence to the CCBs to support a case for change. The second area that we're continuing to collaborate on is to look at streamlining asset verification, looking at formalizing the risk assessment that the agency is beginning to undertake, but to make it easier to go through that process. And the proposals there, we have sketched something out, and we're hoping that we may get some funding to be able to see that through. And just to finish off with, Nigeria has everything in place in terms of its technical compliance with all of the FATF standards. And really the next steps are around operational effectiveness. And for that, it's that the key is sustained political support and resourcing. Abdullahi has already drawn attention to how many public servants are covered by the scope of the legislation. They need resourcing to be able to do their job properly. The way that we would hope that we can continue to argue for those resources is but that alignment of objectives. So the project aligned itself. Fortunately, our outcomes aligned with the objectives of the CCB. The objectives of the CCB is really to be able to demonstrate value to money, its value for money to the government. The government's objective is to be able to demonstrate its own value, probity to the citizens, that resourcing these operations are good for Nigeria, they're good for growth, and because they're good for investment in the country. And so just to finish off that sort of positive framing, I draw your attention to the statement at the bottom of this screen, which is progress can come through small wins, maybe incremental changes that just sit a little bit below the radar. But, we're pleased to be able to argue that that was our approach to building sustainable impact. And we hope to continue to be able to do that over the foreseeable future. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie and Abdullahi. Can I first of all say impeccable timing? I mean, you've come in exactly on half an hour, which is brilliant. That was incredibly rich, so much, and I'm still recovering from the statistic that Abdullahi has responsibility for 5 million public servants. I mean, where do you start? My goodness, that is a huge challenge in any event. So what I would request is that if you've got questions, please put them in the chat, and I will then try to pick them out of the chat and ask you to put on your camera and then ask your question. But I want to start off with one to both of you. This is very much a process rather than a content question, which is that we see in a lot of research that it's done, it can be very good, but it doesn't have real life consequences or real life impact. This research, whenever I've looked at it, has always struck me as really noteworthy because there has been a direct feed into a particular government agency, public agency, and that has generated changes and had an impact in the area that you're trying to impact. So I'm really interested to hear from both of you. What do you think are the conditions for success for research to be able to do that? Jackie, could I start with you?
That's a really good question. And I think from my perspective, it was how we went about it in the first place. So thinking about what would be useful rather than, so it was a very pragmatic approach. How can we design something that would make a tangible difference to agencies that were operating on the ground? So we could see that a lot of effort and emphasis was already going in. Nigeria was committed to all the FATF requirements. It's done a huge amount in terms of its legal framework. And what we were interested in was, you know, what's the operational reality? What are the challenges? What are you trying to cope with? And how could we, by making small suggestions, perhaps, just make a difference? So a very pragmatic structure, not trying to change the world.
Okay, so research design is your sort of top tip there, and in the debate in the scholarship of incrementalism versus Big Bang approaches, you're coming down very firmly on the incrementalist side. I see. Abdullahi, same question to you. You know, what do you think are the conditions for success? And what one additional question is that I wonder if you yourself are from a research background, and that actually gives you a sort of an empathy with what researchers are trying to do that helps in this circumstance.
Okay, thank you very much. Definitely that contributed a lot. But what Jackie said initially is the design. If you look at how we went about it, we are doing a research in Nigeria. So we got two people in Nigeria that are in the anti-corruption environment. That is very key. They have access, they have experience. So if you want to do any research in any country, it's good for you to look at who are the people there and how can you utilize their expertise, their experience, their connection, and be able to achieve your research. It's not good for you just want to do maybe a research in a country. Some people will come from outside, they don't know about the environment, and then they'll just start doing it. In our case, I was part of the research, and then another person again who is a very highly influential person in Nigeria, who is also a researcher and also part of the anti-corruption agency environment. He was also part of it, and I think that is one of the key things that made it to be possible. So those are the two things: how we arrange the research, and then the kind of the people involved. Another thing again is about finding out the concerns of the participants themselves. And that's one of the things that we have done throughout our research. Instead of us to tell them, okay, this is what we think is happening, we ask them, what is your concerns and how are you resolving them? So by the time we are doing that, during our first workshop in Abuja, we asked all the law enforcement agencies that we invited, EFCC, ICPC, police, and so many other things. What are the concerns that you have? And they were very free. They are telling us about their concerns. And by the time we understand their concerns, then how are you resolving those concerns? And they start telling us about all the things they are doing. And by saying all those things, we can see that some of them, they are just doing it because they don't have resources to do it. But that is the practical thing for them to do. So what can we do to improve what you are doing? And that's what informs most of our findings. Thank you very much.
Yeah, if I can just add to that, collaboration was critical. And people were those workshops were really informative because people were very clear about what the problems were, and they knew what needed to be done. So we, in a way, provided the mouthpiece, I think, with our reports.
There are lots of questions in the chat, so I don't want to hog this, but I just want to lob in another quick one. Sorry, everybody. That you both mentioned political support as being useful. Do you think that's a precondition, or do you think that the fact you're taking an incrementalist approach and doing things that people on the outside might consider a bit perhaps boring and insignificant, like changing a form, but we know is really important? You know, do you think that's a way of operating even if you don't have political support because it's a bit below the radar?
Well, Abdullahi might want. Do you want to answer that one first?
Okay. Let me start. The political support. Let me say it here now that we've been receiving a lot of support from this government. Since I became the chairman of the Code of Conduct Bureau, the budget for the bureau has increased around 5 times. And that is the indication of the kind of support that we are receiving from government. But definitely there are a lot of other things, because you cannot do things, you cannot just provide all the necessary resources that we want. But this government has been supporting us, and even the online asset declaration system that we are doing now, this government agency that is providing that support. And when we are trying to do the verification, the Attorney General of the Federation himself was in our office, and then he came and verified his assets. And then he even did a public statement so that he tell people that, okay, I'm here, I'm the chief law officer in Nigeria, and I'm here to verify my asset. So every other body that CCB invites, please, you should come and do it. I can tell you that has greatly increased the work we are doing, because some ministers, some CEOs, once they say that, why am I going to come and verify my asset? But the chief law officer has come himself. So that has increased our visibility in Nigeria, and I can tell you that is a very good thing. So what we are trying to do right now is that we have to show them this, yes, there is value in what we are doing. So they have already started, the government has already started providing the support. But what are we doing with that resources, so that at least we ask for more? So the more we can do, the more recoveries we can get, the more conviction we can get, the more asset we will be able to forfeit, the more people are going to change their behavior, then the government is going to support us. Because I was talking with some government organizations, they are telling me that if you can prove to government that your work is valuable, that work is impactful, then there is no way the government is not going to assist you. And that's what we are going to do now. So it's the two ways. We have our own role to play, and then they too have their own, but you have to convince them, and we are doing that, and we are doing that a lot.
The value of the positive message.
Yes.
Great, thank you. I'm going to move to the questions in the chat now, and I will ask people to ask their question in person. Please just put on your camera if you feel comfortable doing that. Ask the question, and perhaps say who you're directing the question to, whether it's for both our speakers or just one. Wede, your question is the first there. Can I ask you to ask that question in person?
Hi, Robert. Hi. Hello, Abdullah. Hello, Jackie. I happen to know Robert. I don't know Abdullah and Jackie, but I do know Robert. My question is related to Abdullah. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for both you and Jackie. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're a bit muffled, actually. We can read your question in the chat anyway, but maybe ask the question and then we'll read it off the chat as well.
Okay, so let me try. Okay, so the question is there a plan to allow financial institutions have access to the declaration? Because of beneficial ownership management, it's both public and private partnership, and people in financial institutions would love to have access to information around asset declaration. So if you're coming to bring assets to me, or if you're doing transactions with me, with knowing what your asset declaration is, I know what actual value you have. So if there's a transaction that doesn't add up, I can know that there's a question mark here. That's one leg of the question. The second leg of the question is, his 5 million, does it include, in Nigeria, we have things, I don't remember what they're referred to in the UK as, but in Nigeria, we have special advisors, aides, and support people that are also part of the political system, what you would call beneficial owners, that are often utilized for corruption. So are they part of the asset declaration as well? Or are they left out, just leaving a small loophole, a lacuna for people to utilize?
Okay, a very specialist question to start off with, but let's have your answers.
Okay, thank you very much for the first question on access to data. It's very there is issue. There are two things that we have to deal with at CCB: the issue of transparency and issue of privacy. So if we are going to give access to financial institutions, how are we sure that the privacy of those public officers is guarded? But it's a very interesting point that you're making, and definitely some of the things that my board and the management would consider. Because if somebody is in the bank, somebody wants to make a transaction, and he's obviously a PEP, and then he's making a huge transactions. Once you have maybe not the asset declaration, maybe the what you need is to the level of that officer, there is some information that you need to be able to determine whether it's in line with what he's getting. That's another area that is definitely we are going to look at and see how we can collaborate with banks so that our work will be going to be easier. And the issue of the public officers, in Nigeria, once you receive any emolument, anything from government, you're a public officer. It's listed. If you look at the Schedule 2, if you look at the Constitution, you will see it. Even in Schedule 2 of the Act, there is just stated from the President, Vice President, the Clerk in National Assembly, special advisors, senior special advisor, everybody is included. So once you are in the civil service of the Federation, then you are a public officer. It involves almost everybody. And apart from the public officers themselves, even government agencies, private organizations that are owned by government, or government has more than 51% shareholding in those government. For example, NNPC. NNPC is a private organization, but then government owns more than 51% of it. They are also under our coverage. If you look at so many organizations that belong to government, is part of it. So it involves almost everybody. But that's why that risk-based approach is very important. Instead of us to focus our attention or expend our resources thinly across all 5 million, we have to find a way of getting the people that really matters. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you for your response. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Looking at the questions in the chat, I think they're pretty much all directed towards Abdullahi, and that I think well, it indicates the very great interest, I think, in how this is working itself out in reality, which is fantastic. Samuel, can I bring you in to ask your two questions, which I think are both to Abdullahi?
Exactly. Thanks, Robert, and thanks for the presentation. So my first question, maybe just to say, I'm with Transparency International, the secretariat in Berlin, focusing on West and Central Africa. That's why this is of particular interest to me. My first question was just on challenges that CCB experiences when it comes to the verification of declared assets that are found outside of the borders of Nigeria. Is there cooperation with your counterparts, starting with ECOWAS and beyond, to be able to do that? And noting the massive number of subjected public officials. The second one is twofold, the second question. So on the one hand, do you have, or I would say the whole infrastructure come with incentives for those who are compliant? And conversely, do you also have sanctions for non-compliance? And maybe just to expand a bit on that. Thanks again and congratulations.
Okay, thank you very much. It's a really very important question, because one of the challenges that we're facing is trying to have access to that collaboration between Nigeria and some other countries. For example, now I told you about the case that we had in London about a property that was bought by one public officer. The issue is that if you want to prosecute those cases, we need to have details of information in that country, certified true copies if there are some documents. So right now, there is a property in London, for example, around 15 properties in London. But what you need is to have certified true copies of those title deeds. So those are some of the challenges that we face. Apart from that, that feature that we did now, we're trying to do MLAT to be able to get it. So we're trying to see how best can we go about doing that. But one of the things that we did at the CCB is to find a way, how can we collaborate with other anti-corruption agencies across the country and even, across the continent. We joined the Commonwealth Head of Anti-Corruption Agencies in the Commonwealth of Africa. So all the anti-corruption agencies in Commonwealth Africa, we have a meeting, and so we attended conferences where we meet each other and then discuss. So if I have any case to do with Cameroon, for example, I can have the access of the head of anti-corruption agency in Cameroon. If I have another one in South Africa, even last time that we attended a conference in South Africa, we even wanted to sign an MOU with the South African Anti-Corruption Agency. So that's what we are doing with these anti-corruption agencies in the continent. Transparency International was also attended one of the conference, and they presented to us the UNODC too was there. So we are doing a lot of things to find out how best can we go about doing that. So, but we need support, in informal collaboration with them, and then before you come to the final, because final usually takes time. But if you have informal collaboration with these agencies, I have access, for example, to some law enforcement agencies in US, in UK, for informal discussions before we come to the formal discussion. But it's something that definitely we need support. If there's anything that we can get support in that area, is definitely welcomed. And then the issue that you mentioned about, the second one you mentioned about, sorry, can you just remind me about it?
Incentives on the one
Okay,
hand for
okay,
compliant
punishment.
ones, and yes, and
Okay, sorry, I did
sanctions.
not mention in my presentation. Surprisingly, the punishment for breach of code of conduct is very, very severe in Nigeria. Not in terms of going to jail, but in terms of, let me just give you the three major punishments for breach of code of conduct. The first is that as a public officer, you can be removed from your office. That is the first one. The second one is that you can be banned from office for up to 10 years. And the third one is that any asset that is acquired from the breach of code of conduct, it can be forfeited. So those are the three major punishments by a code of conduct tribunal. And one of the key things in Nigeria is that apart from code of conduct bureau, we also have code of conduct tribunal. And that code of conduct tribunal is one code is they hear only cases of code of conduct bureau. Not and nobody can go to code of conduct tribunal and start a case. It's only cases that comes from code of conduct bureau, and then those punishments are there. And once you breach any of the code and we take you to court, we'll be able to get punishment. And then it's very easy. Sometimes the cases is strict liability offenses. Have you declared your asset? No, I have not declared my asset. You have already committed an offense. Have you given false information in asset declaration? Yes, I've done that. You have already committed an offense. So have you delayed declaring your asset? Yes, I've delayed in declaring my asset. It's also an offense. There's another one, for example, if you have a foreign bank account outside Nigeria, by mere fact that you have that bank account is enough for you to breach a code of conduct. By conducting business as a public officer is also an offense. So the courts are there, and then we have the court, and then we have CCB. So that's how we are doing it. But then the incentive for compliance, that's what we are trying to do is very important right now. Yesterday, I had a management meeting, and I also discussed it with my board, that we are trying to see how can we reward people that are complying. So what we are trying to do is that at the end of the year, we are going to do like a award ceremony. Not about saying that you're honest or you're not honest, about the level of compliance in your organization. If CCB has 99% compliance, or for example, NNPC has 99% compliance, then we are going to award you the compliance of the year or something like that. So the first three or first four, we are going to reward people that are compliant. And if your organization is not compliant, we are also going to mention it and say that this organization has not been compliant. We believe that that will make a lot of public officers to be compliant, and then the organization to be mandating them, to be compelling them to comply. And that's one of the incentives we are trying to start. We have not done it yet, but that's what we are trying to do.
There's a question from Devi, which I'll read out rather than come
Yes.
to Devi, which actually picks up on that, which is what are the compliance rates like? Of your 5 million, what
Okay.
proportion, or which in a good organization, what
Okay.
proportion submit?
So unfortunately, if you remember when I was talking about the 5 million people, the amount of money that is required for us to print forms for 5 million, what, for example, now let me just give you an example. In our budget, for example, we have some certain amount of money. It's not going to print enough forms for us to distribute to all public servants. So right now, we don't have that reach. So we are just gradually getting the compliance to be increased. So like I said, we started very recently. We have uploaded our form. People are complying now. So, but I cannot give you let's say it's very low, because we don't have the resources for us to even have all the forms distributed to everybody. But with this new online asset declaration that we're doing, and with the new uploaded forms, now people are compliant. Almost on a daily basis, we see them coming to our office.
Great, thank you. We've now got a deluge of questions in the chat. So I'm going to start giving apologies. I think to Paul and Tom, we probably won't get to, and sincere apologies for that. But of course, we can follow up afterwards with those. I just want to come to two questions here, which I'll read out just for the sake of brevity. From Favor, I'm curious to know whether the court has actually imposed any of the penalties or punishments on any public officials. And from Janet Rika, I want to know if the asset declaration system has a system of red flags built into it that triggers verification, and what kind of red flags they would be. So in a couple of minutes, if you could choose which of those you'd like to answer, or both if possible, back to you, Abdullahi.
Okay, we have so many cases right now. I am, as I was telling you, we have cases that we forfeited interim forfeiture of properties in Abuja. We have cases of uh, celebrated cases where public officers were even removed from office. We have so there are a lot of cases. Like you said, maybe we'll get a record of that and then share it as we go along. But we are just doing it as we go along. But the other issue is about. Sorry, just repeat the last one.
It was on red flags and whether you have a
Okay,
system of
red
red
flags.
flags that
So
triggers
one of the
automatic.
things that we are doing on red flags is very easy for us in trying to determine the at least for public officers. Once we have your salaries, your emoluments as a government officer, that is the benchmark for us. So what we did, for example, there is an organization in Nigeria, Revenue Mobilization, which determines the salary scales of all public officers. The public officers that the elected officers in government, the political elected officers, political office holders, sorry. So we wrote to them, and then they gave us the salaries of governors, presidents, president, vice president, all the top government officials. So you know your salary. And if you are doing any verification of your assets, we see that this is the beginning when you became the president or governor or minister, this is what you have. And then by the time you are leaving, this is what you have. The increase in your net worth, is it in line with the emolument that you're having as a public officer? If it's not in line, then we have to come and explain it to us. So that is the red flag. That is the basis for us. This is your salaries, this is your emoluments, this is what we know you are going to earn as a public officer. And once you declare your assets, we'll look at it and see whether it's in line with that. If you cannot explain it, then you have to come and we can take you to court for that. So that is one of the basic reasons we are going to do it. But with our online asset declaration that we are doing right, we have incorporated that to be automatic. So once the system look at your online asset, sorry, your initial declaration, and then you look at your final declaration, and then is going to compare and see with what we have already about your salaries and emoluments, and then you'll be able to say this person, it needs to be verified. We have several cases. A public officer will come with maybe hundreds of millions of naira from what we know. We know that is at least from the government office, you will not be able to achieve that. But then you can explain it if you, for example, is inheritance. Oh, you are doing business before, you have dividends. Oh, there are some legitimate way for you to explain that. That is okay. We are not saying that somebody has stolen from government. We are just saying that you have to explain to us. But if you cannot explain to us, then that is why the problem is. And one of the key things I want to add is that with Code of Conduct Bureau and Tribunal, the onus is on you, the public officer, to prove that you have not breached the code. The onus is not on us to prove. So if you take you to CCT, you are the one that is going to tell them that, okay, this amount of money, I can explain it. And if you cannot explain it, then we can forfeit it. So that's one key thing about that.
If I can just add very quickly to that, I was talking about our future plans, and one of them was around helping with the creation of a risk matrix, and that will build in red flags. So, for example, things like position, grade of a public servant, the degree of discretion that person exercises, the specific government department that they're in. Some are more vulnerable than others, involvement in procurement, etc., etc. So yes, red flags are very important.
Fantastic. And I think I'm right in saying that that sort of non-conviction based illicit enrichment, unexplained wealth approaches, they are becoming increasingly popular around the world for obvious reasons, just as you've articulated. Jackie, just before we go, is there anything, because you haven't had a word in Edgeways for a while, because all the questions have been directed towards the practical side of things. Is there anything you'd like to add before we sign off?
No, I don't think so. I think it's been, I'd just like to thank everybody for their engagement. It's been really some really good questions. I was looking in the chat at what things are being asked. So there's clearly a lot of interest in this particular area.
Great. Well, can I thank both of you? You've managed to pack a huge amount into an hour session. Abdullahi, you've got through by yourself a massive quantity of information and expertise, which is really a privilege for us to hear. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jackie. Your foundational research has been so important in this. Just to remind everybody, if you want to keep in touch with what we're doing with future webinars, to see the replay of this on YouTube or previous things like our state capture session, sign up to the newsletter. The details are in the chat or on the GIACE website. Thank you again, and we will reconvene for our monthly webinars in September. Goodbye, everybody.
Great.